Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our concepts edition for the week where we go over big picture thinking, general theory, and just kind of what we're chewing on in the businesses. I am Devin Bedoni.
And I'm Uriel Eisen.
You want to hit us the quote?
And we got a quote. The harder I work, the luckier I get. Anonymous. I don't know who it's from.
It's very funny.
Yeah. I think it's a good summary of the how I built this podcast.
Uh-huh.
He always asks at the end, how much would you attribute to luck and how much to hard work or skill? I forget what the question is exactly.
Uh-huh.
I think it's skill. Maybe it's hard work. Anyway, and I think the best answers are always like, kind of like it takes both, right?
Right.
And in some ways, like, I feel like hard work is sort of like table stakes. It's like you need, generally speaking, right? And then like you also need some amount of luck to just be in the right place at the right time, or, for things to kind of.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I thought when I read this quote is that it's kind of like, it's funny in that it's sort of like you're never lucky. You just have to work really hard. It's like the harder I work, the luckier I get. And it's like, no, actually, you're just like you're making things happen. And it appears to be that you're lucky finally. But really, you're just working your butt off.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's like you make your own luck, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. And
yeah.
Like that takes away from the fact that I think you really do need to be lucky and you do need to be in the right place at the right time.
Right.
I think that's not to be understated. Anyway, it was funny.
Yeah, I feel like as it applies to sort of lean, I don't know, there is sort of a feeling in the shop of like things start to, everything starts to get a little bit better and things run a little bit more smoothly. And it's hard to directly attribute it sort of similarly. It's like hard to attribute it to like an improvement, right? Yeah. And it's like it's just the stack up of a lot of hard work that sort of results in interesting, generally good results. So
yeah, totally. You want to lead us off this week? I was very curious about the burger joint example.
Oh yeah. So I went to get burgers at a successful local chain. It's a
long-standing.
Yeah.
Like what's the word for that?
Established. Anyway, it's
a monument. Sort of.
Yeah, in Seattle. And I was watching them cook. They're extremely fast, like from the time you order to the time you get your order. Mm-hmm. They're very fast. They've clearly thought a lot about systems and how stuff is done. Like looking at the kitchen, there's a lot of sort of specific tools and like places to set things. Mm-hmm. But in watching them work, they are doing pretty big batches. Mm-hmm. And so they'll make, I'm trying to think, do a little quick math, probably about 80 burgers at a time. Mm-hmm. Roughly 60
you mean like
to 80
on the grill.
Like they'll put all the patties on the grill, and then they'll put all the buns on the grill and sort of move it off to the side, and then there's a counter, and then they do all the stacking, and one person hits them with like cheese and lettuce or whatever the toppings are, while the other person is sort of getting the other side prepped. And then they lay them all on, put them all together, and then, wrap them and sort of deliver them to essentially the buffer where the person who takes the orders grabs them from.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure it is pull, right? I don't think they're just like, we need the griddle cooking.
Always, yeah.
Always. That said, they have a line, right? So like there's demand. And so I was trying to think as I was standing there watching, trying to think like, should they not be batching? And what would happen if they reduced their batch size or eliminated, like went to single piece flow? I mean, a few areas that I noticed pretty substantial difficulty was like the guy operating the griddle was pretty short, and because of the quantity of burgers they wanted to make at one time, the griddle was quite deep. And so then like scraping the griddle and reaching the back of the griddle seemed really hard. Anyway,
it's an interesting sort of like case, like I think our first, how to say this, like our knee-jerk reaction is to say, is this one piece flow?
Right.
Instead of, have they rationalized their production?
Exactly.
And it's like, probably both are important lenses. And, looking at it, you might be like, well, they probably could develop a more efficient system by trying to do one piece flow, but like, what a lift. And you wonder what their wastage is, right? Like what the various wastes in their business are right now.
Well, I mean, right. So I guess like some of the more insidious wastes associated with batching that I think go unnoticed often is like everything in the kitchen gets bigger, and which means you're walking further between things. Right. So like the area where they would move everything to do their assembly was quite large. Their griddle is quite large.
That, when you were describing it, I was like imagining trying to do all those burgers. Well, plus there's also just like, food does not do well in a buffer zone, generally speaking. Like
I mean, they're
have
cranking through the burgers. Totally. And I guess what I've seen, so like on one hand, we don't want to be dogmatic, I think is part of the drill, right? Like, I think some people get frustrated with lean and TPS because everyone's like, here are the things you have to do. And it's like, my business is running better than yours, right? Like, I want to definitely recognize that. Like, I don't think those business owners would look at my business and go like, ooh, could we trade one for one, right? Like,
same.
So like, they're obviously doing well. I think what I've noticed recently in like, we eliminated our shipping station, and that basically went to single piece flow. The next couple days, I was sort of asking Sam, like, how is it going? And basically it was frustrating and annoying. And the reasons were that every step that had friction, you're now doing a lot of times, and you're not just like getting in the groove or something. And so like, I'm thinking with the burgers, like there's a refrigerated drawer full of lettuce. So the person leans down, scoops up a whole pot of lettuce. Like they had this little like scoop pot thing.
Like a colander or something.
And then they'd sort of like go burger to burger really fast, dropping a little bit on each one. And because they were all next to each other, the lettuce that fell over the side was sort of on the next burger. So like it seemed like, and yet bending over to get lettuce is not like that ergonomic. Right. So like doing that, I think the instant response of like, why don't you single piece flow those would be like, I don't want to bend down every time. And then it's the next question is, okay, where can we put the lettuce? And right now, so I don't, and it would be a big lift for them.
I was just picked up Toyota Kata again this last week. I feel like I finally have some brain space.
Oh, nice.
And then this morning, just while I drank tea for a minute, I was flipping through it. And I'm in the part of the book where they're talking about sort of the make production versus optimized process mindset, and how a lot of companies do things that seem very efficient, but the underlying goal is to make production, which sounds like this company, the burger joint, absolutely is doing. Like they have clearly optimized to make production, right? Whereas, and the example given in Toyota Kata was like having an assembly cell with multiple operators. You can have a situation where by design operators help other operators when issues arise, which at first glance is like, that's great, right? We're going to have less downtime. People can cross train. And then, but from the quote unquote Toyota perspective, like that's not great because that hides issues and we're not optimizing the process. We need to design this so that people are more or less fixed in their position, so that when an issue arises, we're all aware of it, and then we can together fix the issue. But versus just kind of like mini firefighting, across stations,
right? And allowing flexibility for that seems like a great robust system, but it is so robust that you can't find failures. even though the failures exist, they're just being dealt with.
Yeah, and I mean, we're being a little pedantic and like ridiculous, but like being like, well, the lettuce, this is great because the lettuce falls off the burger, but it lands on the other burger.
Yeah.
Like, well, you should have a situation where lettuce doesn't fall off a burger.
Yeah.
Again, being pedantic and a little ridiculous when it comes to making burgers.
Maybe,
but maybe not.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting kind of lens to view through, and just illuminating for me, because we are often because we are routinely kind of up against a deadline, we are very production mindset oriented in our shop.
Right.
And figuring out how to kind of dial that back a little bit.
Yeah, something I struggle with is I mean, this is in every book basically, but like you can't have improvement without standards.
Uh-huh.
And I think I would say don't have standards in a lot of our production, like
sure,
an SOP that everyone's working to exactly. And I think the struggle becomes that deviation from standard indicates either an issue with the standard, so the standard needs improving, or a deviation because of some other scenario that cropped up that needs a different approach. Also, that should be either integrated into the SOP if that's something that's going to recur, or like, why was that material out of spec, or why did that thing? Yeah. And so, I think it lets you be more aware of kind of, where things need improving. I've been struggling with this with our morning meeting. I don't feel like I feel like our morning meeting is really not that very good. I have an outline that we try to stick to, but I don't feel like maybe the thing to do is to have a part where we improve the meeting in the meeting.
I think I've been having struggles with that as well. Not so much the format, but like it's ended up being me basically explaining what our day is going to be, which is illuminating, because it means that what we do is we have not kind of like boiled down our process to core principles enough that it's obvious what we need to do in a day.
Okay.
Like I'm still the one sort of interpreting and passing on this information. And it was another thing.
You're expediting.
I'm sort of expediting.
Maybe?
Yeah, or it's more like I'm pulling the threads out of a jumble a little bit and making them visible. Whereas I do believe it's very possible still for us to find the common threads across all of our work.
Right.
Enough that everybody can see it easily. And
then make it visible somehow.
And then make it visible. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Right.
Like we're much better off than we were 9 months ago. And still that's kind of what our morning meeting is. Not like hey, what are we going to do? What cool, improvements are we going to do? Like, what issues have you guys been coming across? It's more like, here's what we're doing today. You do this, then you do this. You do that, then you do this, because this is the sequence it needs to fall into.
Right. And that's not evident.
It's not evident. And, like I could just say, like, our work is highly variable. Like, you can't standardize whatever it's sawing sequences, because not everyone programmed the parts, and they're not aware of like run times and stuff. But again, that's sort of giving myself a pass for something that I think is standardizable,
right?
At some point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess like to wrap up the burger joint. I don't really know what the answer is there. But I do suspect like there's this tendency to sort of do like peak seeking. Yeah. Like it's a very simple algorithm to say, always go uphill. And then you get to the top where every step you take gets you downhill a little bit. Yeah. But you might just be on a local optimum.
And so you're saying that establishment probably has found a peak?
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sort of completely revisit, the whole thing.
It kind of comes back to then, like, you sort of come back to market pressures thing, where it's like, the putting it in the automaking sphere, GM and Ford, they didn't have a lot of motivation to improve beyond their initial system improvements that were developed around the Model T until the 1970s, when economic realities really started to shift. So like, they did a very good job for a long time, and there wasn't a lot of need to improve further.
That's an interesting point, because thinking about that, I wonder what happens when that burger joint is sort of slow. Because suddenly they shouldn't make a big batch, and so now the inefficiencies are still there but have not been dealt with.
Yeah.
Or maybe they still fire the same batch and then they have like a cold burger.
Yeah, I don't know. But I guess putting it in terms of like, they don't have a lot of competition, direct competition, right? Like they're sort of a fast food joint.
Yeah.
But they are like an iconic, they're an iconic spot that's not a national chain. So they have a little bit of a different...
There's like brand... I don't know if it's loyalty exactly, but it doesn't feel the same as going to like McDonald's.
No, it's
and so
different.
They're not trying to hit that same price point.
They're not trying to hit that same price point, but they're also not like competing with a brew pub that charges $20 for a burger.
Right.
So they're sort of in this unique market where they can probably like exist on that peak and be fine, and there isn't much market pressure to become more efficient.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess like the other thing, I think there's a tendency when you're looking at a workplace like that, and we had this in our shop a while ago when we thought we needed another mill and then didn't.
Yeah.
Is like the difference between, and we keep saying this, but like cycle time and tack time. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I wonder if you could look at that joint, or I'm sure a manager goes like, wow, everyone is working so fast.
Yeah.
All day.
Right.
All right, there's no slack in this system. Like we're good. Like clearly we're maxed out. Maybe we need another person, but I think we can make do. Everyone's like, great. Like they come to work, all that stuff. And so I think when you see everyone moving all day, there's sort of like a feeling that you're doing all the work you can.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's ever situations where, because they do a big batch one, where burger like I think they have like 4 options on the menu, 5 options. Like I wonder if, by the time they get back around to burger number 5, it's sort of like, hey, all hands, we need we need burger A is out of stock. And they're like, okay, let me just finish up burger D.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to burger A. Sorry.
Oh, because they're doing batches of each.
Yeah. So instead of like doing a balanced batch where it's like some of A, B, C, D, and E.
Interesting.
They're doing all A and then all B, and I just wonder. And then I wonder if you'd find slack in that system merely by just because you're freeing up human labor from the things.
Yeah,
from producing inventory ahead of time.
Undoubtedly, I'm sure that there's a lot of burgers in the dumpster at the end of a day there.
Yeah, I wonder. Right, or like at the end of a surge.
Yeah.
You get like 3 burgers in this bin and 4 burgers in that bin that have sat there over the limit or something. Yeah. And then they have to be chucked, and then they go down to the lower volume. Anyway, it's interesting to watch because I think it's easy to say like, oh, yeah, you're saying like knee jerk single piece flow is better.
Yeah.
And the fact is, I think immediately it's always worse. Almost in depth. Right.
Yeah.
Although that's not always true. I've seen examples of like switching to single piece flow, even though it feels less efficient across the board. By the end of the day, you have more finished product that can be shipped. Yeah. And less work in process. Yeah.
It's fun to take it outside of our own businesses, to take these sort of concepts and try and apply them, because it's so easy to just get, as our friend Avi says, wrapped around the axle, thinking about problems in your own business because you're so deep in them, and everything feels so critical and important. Whereas like contemplating someone else's burger joint, like you throw any idea around, it has zero consequence.
That's certainly true.
That sort of leads into a little factoid that I found out this morning about Toyota sorting their Kanban for sequence.
Heresy.
Heresy indeed.
Okay.
Which I thought, it's not, well, I guess it is applicable to me because we do sort and reshuffle our jobs based on, applicability to machines and changeovers and stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely applicable to you.
Well, we do it, but I always feel like, all right, what's happening here that we are doing this?
So I had just a moment to kind of read this before.
Is in Toyota Kata?
In Toyota Kata before coming over here.
This is why you need to reread these books over and over.
Yeah.
Every time I feel like you're like, what?
Yeah. But basically, the example given was that things are triggered. Kanban cards are triggered as stock is used. Those triggered Kanbans go into some sort of a sequence of bins. And the idea being that you always pull from those bins in a specific sequence. So let's say you had product A, product Z, product D.
Okay.
And they may have been triggered in D, A, Z, but they go into their respective bins of, let's say, A, Z, D sequence. And when you go to do production, you always pull A first, and then you pull Z, and then you pull D, because that is what makes the most sense in terms of minimizing changeovers and best production flow within the shop. So it's essentially a production.
I feel like your letter choices.
Well, they were
something to be desired. But
sorry, I'm actually using the ones that they used in the
really.
books. I think it was
funny.
to say that, like, not in the sequence that is necessarily intuitive.
I see. So intentionally.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. That's a even better example.
Yeah, so like you might be like, well, this one was triggered first. We do that one first.
That's how I've been thinking about it.
Which I think has its merits.
Well, I see the failures, but I've been saying, okay, well, I must be doing something else wrong in the shop, or like we need to adjust Kanban quantity. But I think this is a great example of not becoming dogmatic in that, like, just because I didn't know something about how Toyota does it and I'm trying to like
be perfect,
hammer a square peg into a round hole.
Uh-huh.
When really the answer is like, what makes the most sense for you?
Well, it comes back to this constant tension between the ideal of one piece flow, and the reality of production leveling. And so it sounds like this is sort of their response to that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you break it up on like a day's production basis, so if you're like, okay, every day we're going to make A, Z, and D, probably.
Yeah.
We're going to do it in this sequence. We might skip one if it didn't get triggered. Then you have a leveled standard production each day versus like having random switches between different products and random changeovers. Like you might be able to say, for example, I happen to know that use the same size stock for two products.
Right.
You might be able to say, when these two are both triggered, we always start on this one, then we go to that one because they use the same tray and they mitigate the changeover time between those two.
Interesting.
And then if we don't, it's not like we produce D if it wasn't triggered. If D wasn't triggered, we skip to the next one in the line. But you're always, if
that's
from whatever is triggered, you do it in a in a specific sequence.
Huh.
That is curious.
That is curious. That feels like a contradiction. I feel like it's always like that is still something I have not really figured out, is the balance between their basically like you can't schedule production not claim, but like you can't schedule production, so you only do what is called for.
Yeah.
Balanced with like they have a whole chapter in the Toyota production system about how they schedule production like way ahead of time and really try to balance things, and I guess like that is maybe where the rubber meets the road, is like we do it this way but only if it's called for or something like that.
I think it's like we do it this way for now on the way to our eventual theoretical goal
of one by one.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like we reorder things sometimes because the Kanban quantity is not balanced to reflect the same number of days of production. So like if a pin Kanban gets triggered,
yeah,
and we don't kind of run it like in the next few hours, we'll run out of pins. Whereas if a body, I'm trying to think this through, if like a cam body gets triggered, and we run it tomorrow, we're almost always fine.
Yeah.
And so like our buffers are not the same length essentially.
Yeah. I think you need to figure out a way to.
But I don't know if that's a bad thing. Like it sort of sounds like we can have different tracks. I don't need permission from Toyota necessarily, but
well,
like to keep pushing.
I wasn't thinking different tracks necessarily. I was thinking if you were to adjust your quantities so that in a theoretical day where everything was triggered, you could get through everything that day, enough to produce for that day.
Yeah.
That would be sort of an ideal where if you are at full steam on all products, you can produce a day's worth of production across all products each day.
That's an interesting point. Some of our, like, I feel like we've been working hard at getting our run times up sort of for overnight production, but I wonder if we need a parallel effort to get, and it wouldn't be hard at all, to get our run times down so we can do more changeovers to produce more parts. Because like two of our parts we make, the minimum runtime is 2 hours. But we often don't need that many parts. So I wonder if I need to write a new program that would run for like an hour and everything runs for an hour, or everything, I don't know. I mean, yeah, chasing the goal of like one by one, where it produces one of this part, one of a different part.
That would be a excuse me. That would be a good 2-track where it's like we have daytime production, which is,
and we're driving up the runtime.
No, driving down the runtime.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, daytime,
and then overnight buffer stock basically.
Right. And drive it
up.
It's so interesting. The industry as a whole emphasizes walkaway time. Right? It's like we can walk away from this, like it runs on its own for 24 hours or 48 hours. And everyone's like, wow, that's amazing. And it is very amazing when that is making a mixed production. Yeah. Right? Like on a pallet changer or something where it's running a whole bunch of parts in the quantities needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally you're running batches there, so that is the challenge. Yeah. How to optimize your batch to match the rest of your flow, which is less batchy.
But we had talked about getting more vices on the machine to run op1 in one vice and op2 in another vice. And I was sort of like, it'd be tempting to just run two different parts. But that, then a longer runtime, you would be more in balance, especially if that's a family of parts that always ship at the same time. Like if you're shipping a body, you're probably shipping a cam with it. Right. And a pin. So it'd be very cool if every time it ran, it would run one of each. And suddenly you'd be approaching, I don't know. Yeah. Hard to say when that will happen.
60, 80 years maybe.
No, but it's important. I think it's useful to keep it in mind as an ideal. Yeah. Because otherwise...
100%.
Yeah. I mean, I think we see what happens when it's like sort of not blindly, but like putting one foot in front of the other of like, oh, now I can walk away from the machine. That's a huge win. What if I could do that for longer? And then you optimize for that and lose sight of the whole system.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're dealing with is you're dealing with another issue layered on top of these issues, which is fully unattended production, taking advantage of a 24-hour day, right? Not an 8-hour day. So I think that does change the calculus somewhat.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so, it needs to be balanced, I think, with these other things. But I think there's a way you could marry those two concepts to be like, our day includes this after hours portion, but we still want to look at being able to run everything in a sequence where we get through everything in one day and make our quantities adjusted accordingly. And you probably know we make 80% of this product and 20% of this product. Yeah. Balance it accordingly. Don't just say we're going to make even numbers of everything every day. Right. Which would be easy to do when you're so focused on the process.
So since we eliminated tumbling, I think soon we're going to eliminate our buffer in front of the paint department, which will definitely kick us in the ass a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm sure we'll have days where we don't quite get our sequence right and get there the next day without the parts we need to paint that day.
Uh-huh.
But I think that'll be pretty informative.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we'll stick to it. I think our transition is going to be moving to safety stock, where we have like
right.
highly QC'd
Yeah.
buffers there. Speaking of safety stock, I thought this would be a nice topic because what is it, like the supplier relationships, I feel like are, I don't know, everyone deals with like dealing with suppliers and they don't do what you need, or they do, or whatever.
Are you saying you're mad at me?
Well, so you supply our stock pre-cut. Yeah. You had an issue with
our power supply, our phase converter.
Phase converter kind of
it stopped working.
It stopped working. And then because of that, we ran out of stock.
Yep.
For 4 days or something.
Yeah, I believe so.
And so we were sort of talking about it. It's like I don't know what the answer is from our perspective, because I mean, it wasn't a huge problem. Like we adjusted some things and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's nothing I could say to you that's sort of like, hey, can you change this so that this doesn't happen again? Right? Like equipment does go down.
Yeah.
Even if it was in-house, we could have had like our saw goes down for a few days. And then, so I was just it made me rethink, like, I know Eliyahu Goldratt recommends keeping like quite a bit of inventory at the top of your production line.
Yeah.
Right? Like raw materials.
Yep.
And so we could sort of do that. And I was sort of thinking about having Kanbans for that are a separate color or something, that is like, we're thinking about adding a designation of safety stock that triggers more conversation. I don't know if the goal is conversation, but it's sort of like, hey, something went wrong, right? Like, what happened here? What are we going to do about it? Maybe it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be seen, well, one perspective would be that variables like this, unpredictability, are a natural part of the world and of production. So plan accordingly. And
right.
The other perspective would be try and mitigate those, coming back to the lettuce thing, sort of like,
right.
You can either plan to have lettuce fall on the burger next door, or you can figure out how to not drop lettuce.
Yeah.
The question is like relative costs and benefits. Raw stock pre-cut in your quantities at this point, pretty cheap, not much of a cost.
Yeah.
But long term, and as you grow, that could potentially be an issue, but I'm sure you would figure out different, like,
what would be an issue?
Holding a lot of safety stock as you got big.
Yeah, I mean, I think cutting in-house makes sense, but also I wonder about having more than one supplier. The problem is that you're able to do things that our previous supplier wasn't, namely actually cutting the piece to the length we request.
Which is really fun. Side note.
Yeah.
Given the quality of saws these days, and like I happen to know from conversations with that same supplier, that like they're nesting these cuts on like with using software, right? Like they're nesting. Interesting. Like I did a job at one point with them that was all the same size materials, like 2.5 by 4 inch rectangular bar. We had a huge number of variable lengths, cuts in varied quantities. Happen to know from conversations with him that all the nesting of that saw cutting was done with software and presumably fed right into a machine. Maybe someone hand typed it.
So I was telling this, I was talking about this with Avi.
Yeah.
And he said, well, they do sell aluminum.
What do you mean? Like you cut yourself?
Everything is oversized.
Oh.
They have no incentive to nail the dimension, and they have a huge downside of giving you a little short.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just a holdover from using worse saws.
Probably.
Because yours is like on the money every time.
Yeah. Well, and theirs are on the money too, just at the very top of the tolerance.
Right. It's very repeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they must just be cutting to the top of the tolerance.
And they probably put it in and say, cut to the top of the tolerance.
Yeah. Which is funny.
Or cut near the top of the tolerance, probably.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty reliably, like, right at the top.
It's pretty frustrating.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Maybe we should get them on the podcast.
I don't know if they're
grill them.
A super lean company. Sorry, that was a tangent.
Anyway, yeah, I guess so. Like, do we need more than one supplier? Do we bring it in-house? Do we count on the fact that there will be failures in any system, even if it was internal? Do we leave it? Do we make it so lean that it is fragile, so that problems happen, so that everyone improves? And the other part is, like, realistically, we are not a big enough customer to you or central enough. Like, saw cutting is not your
core functionality.
Right.
No.
And so, like, obviously, you know, we're friends and whatever, and I can be like, hey, can you do this? And you'll be like, okay, I can try, or something, right? But like, realistically, if I was asking a lot, you'd be like, hey, I think you need to, like, get a saw or find someone else to do it. And so there isn't even really the potential for me to ask you to do something. I mean, not that I have anything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to, like, I think there's not a one size fits all answer.
Yeah.
There's, like, in situations like you're talking about where you have, if you had significant influence,
right? If
you were a very large customer for your supplier, it seems like that is a situation where you can say, we're going to make this whole system fragile.
Yeah.
You know, you as a supplier included, we're going to work on this together.
Yeah.
We want our stuff cut to size. We want to make sure you have redundant sawing capacity, all that kind of stuff. At this point, given your size and the relationships, it's probably more of a situation where you have to say, in this application, we just have to have safety stock, or we bring it in-house.
Right.
So that when something does go wrong, we can prioritize the repair accordingly. Like, we can be like, okay, this is a big issue for us. It's not a big issue for our supplier. It's a big issue for us. We're going to put a lot of work into fixing this problem as soon as possible.
Yeah. And something I like to do from time to time is, like, look around the shop and figure out which things are kind of process critical.
Yeah.
I don't have tags on them, but it would be something. There was a company, I forget where they're based, that had tags on every piece of equipment with a contingency plan for what they were going to do if they failed.
Yeah.
Which I thought was brilliant and something that would be really hard to put the time into proactively unless.
Yeah. This, I mean, this situation this last week really brought that home for me.
Yeah.
In a different way. Harkening back to when I first purchased that saw, and I was kind of a little bit on the fence. It felt like a big spend at that time for our business. You know, it's like almost a $30,000 saw.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine pointed out that every process in our shop, basically all production is dependent on sawing. Like, we should have a good saw. I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then this last week, at our current shop, we have 2 phase converters that supply power. One of them died. The other was fine. So I was like, okay, we can still run 2 machines. Let's go. And then I was like, oh, we can't. The saw's the saw's down. We don't have any material pre-staged.
Interesting.
One of the processes involved, like, prepping blanks on our manual lathe. We couldn't do that, even though we had some of the material pre-sawn.
You couldn't do it because the lathe runs on that same one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's damn. So we were like, well, I mean, we could spend some hours here running crazy, you know, cords and stuff, and like trying. But we were like, I think we're just not going to focus on production today. And
interesting.
You know, we could focus on moving, so that's what we did.
Right. Yeah. What bad timing.
Yeah.
Leading it.
Very. But it was, you know, an interesting, just kind of like bringing it all home moment to just notice the amount of how linked the processes are and how important the first step in that chain really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the idea of safety stock, I think, is very appealing to me more and more in enabling us to more aggressively pursue lean, realistic. Internally,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because like our spring supplier, for example, you know, I can't ask them to change the whole way they do their business. Not that I need to, but like,
yeah,
having, like, we almost ran out of springs because we changed suppliers and it just took a little longer to ramp up through no fault of anyone's, really.
right.
And it did arrive just in time, and I was sort of like, oh, that's great. And then I was kind of like, that seems very risky to the business unnecessarily in a funny way. And I think it's sort of tricky because part of the goal of all of this is to keep pushing things to the point where they're uncomfortable and start to break.
Yeah.
And so you sort of need to create an environment where that can happen.
Without tanking the business.
Without tanking the business. Yeah.
Without risking people's livelihoods.
Yeah, or like a relationship where it's like, hey, you shipped it late, and they're like, if you came back with like, yeah, here's all the lean things we learned, they'd be like, I don't care, right? Most companies, I feel like, would be like, yeah, right, but they were late, and we needed them, and you messed up, whatever. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
I think that's probably a good place to wrap up for today. Did you have some stuff you wanted to hit before we're done?
No, yeah, that seems good. We have a fun manufacturing meetup. The folks from Within Tolerance are in town.
Indeed.
And so we're going to do a little manufacturing meetup in Seattle, which should be fun.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Reach out if you're interested.
Oh, yeah. It's on Thursday.
Yes.
So, today.
Tomorrow.
Reach out today.
Oh, if you're listening today.
We'll get you details tomorrow. A number of folks joined the Patreon, so I wanted to... Kevin Blodgett, Will Clarkson, John Bolduck, and Sheldon Lemoyne. We'll probably mispronounce a lot of the words here. But thanks so much for joining and supporting what we're doing here. Still figuring out kind of... Anyway, we have some cool ideas for how to grow this and make it, I don't know, keep adding value, hopefully, to the listeners and to the community.
Yeah.
Speaking of Patreon, we have one. Please go join it. We even have a $1 lurker tier, so $12 a year.
So if lurking is your vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit us up.
Head over there. You can find me at austeremfg.com and austere_manufacturing on Instagram.
You can find me at likenprecision.com and lichen_MFG on Instagram, and the podcast at Incremental CI. And we will see you in a couple days.
Indeed.